Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Bible Illustrated Hand. I'm Bojan Todosijevic. I'm a reader of the Serbian Orthodox Church, and the reason why I'm introducing myself, even though I generally don't do this on this channel, which is my secondary and which is typically watched only by my subscribed audience, is that this video in particular might receive some views that is outside of my audience. So today I will be reviewing, or rather simply sharing my thoughts on the Disney's retelling of an old tale of Cain and Abel. You know, for kids. That is Encanto from 2021. The big blockbuster that everybody loved, I hope, and for a very good reason. So, if you did not watch this cartoon, animated feature, whatever, it is about family Madrigal, and each one of those members of that family, when they reach 5 years old, they get a special gift that is used by the family to help their enclosed community called Encanto. And the plot centers about Mirabelle, who sadly does not receive her gift, and that causes some tensions further into the plot. Clearly, I will have to go very deep into the spoiler territory, so if you did not watch Encanto before watching this video, I highly suggest you immediately stop watching this video, watch Encanto, and then return. Myself, I'm a huge fan of this feature, so I think you'd do well if you watch it. You know, I even considered uploading this to my movie dismemberment channel, but because that is primarily for the movies I didn't really like or enjoy, I do not think that it would deserve this treatment. Okay, so the thing about this movie is that it is a breeding grounds for headcanons. It is a concept that I was introduced to recently. Headcanons are things that the fans of a particular story, media, book, movie, whatever, take for granted to be true, even though it is conjecture. I'm not a huge fan of them. I dislike them immensely, so I will be providing exclusively my Orthodox Christian perspective of this movie without assuming anything to be true in that film's reality. One of the big things is the source of their gifts, which is called consistently a miracle. However, you know, they never actually say it's from God, which, you know, sort of makes sense. Disney doesn't make religious movies, and this sort of makes it more neutral, but it is again implied that that those powers do come from God, or at the very least from a character that dies early on. So we might as well say a saint. So I'm starting with the spoilers. If you have seen the movie, you would know that Mirabelle feels sort of left out of family activities on account of her not having a gift. However, she figures out through seeing cracks in their magical house casita that the powers of the family members are slowly dying out, and they do so because of all the emotional strain all of the family members are exposed to thanks to their family matriarch, Abuela. And one of the most interesting things about this movie is that it does not have a typical villain. Abuela isn't a bad person. However, we will discuss that tad later. I want to discuss something that I found very interesting. Disney is a secular company, and for them it sort of makes sense to make things, you know, as neutral as possible. That is why I found inclusion of direct Christian references within the movie very interesting. For example, we see a church that actually has crosses on it, so it's not simply a church-shaped object, you know, that, well, you can say it's a church, but nothing on it says it's a church. No, this one has crosses. There is a priest who makes the sign of the cross at one point, then at other point he blesses people. We can see an altar in the church with a cross on it. You know, things that I would really not expect to see in modern animated features by such a large company. So I must say that this surprised me a lot, and I'm glad at the inclusion, not merely because I'm a Christian, but because it adds a layer of realism. It is a Christian culture. It's fine if it has, Christian elements. I myself wouldn't mind at all if, for example, Aladdin had more, I know, Muslim references or something. And I think it actually does. I mean, Sultan calls upon Allah and so on. But yeah, I think that these are very welcome. Even though it does not play into the plot directly, it is still something that makes Encanto come a little bit more alive, even though the entire movie is literally bursting with life. The biggest plot point and element of this movie is intergenerational trauma. Now, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't comment on that much or even at all, but I am a Christian, and if there's anything us Christians believe, it is that this intergenerational trauma goes way back to the first human. And it's not something any therapy will cure, it's Christ. So, there's that. So, back to Abuela. Now, in her desire to utilize the gifts of her family for the benefit of the community of the Encanto, you will notice that these are all good things. But if there is anything Christianity has taught us, that too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. And that is the core of Phariseeism. That is specifically in religious sense, when you practice your religion so much, you become a horrible person. Now, thankfully, Abuela snapped out of it. However, at a point, she was blind to the damage that she has been causing, to her own family. And there is a very good reason why she didn't see it. Because how can something good be bad? It is a very simple logic, and on the surface level, it makes sense. However, when you do good to the community at large at the expense of your own family, something's off. As St. Paul says, he who does not do well to his own family, he is worse than a heathen, And this is something that, this is a trap that Abuela fell into. Again, at no point she's like, really evil or anything. However, this clear lack of a typical villain is something that I liked a lot about this movie. This isn't, of course, the first movie that doesn't have a villain, but Disney villains are a thing. I'm the first person who would, like a good villain song and so on. And they sort of tried that, with the inclusion of Bruno, but you know how that goes. Now, it's also very interesting that these supernatural gifts are called gifts. They're not called powers, as in superhero movies. So it is clear or implied, or I'm perhaps reading too much into it, that Madrigals received this from someone, not something, but someone. There is occasionally a temptation if you are a Christian from an apostolic church, that is Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, Roman Catholic, basically Christians who read the lives of the saints, that you might fall into a bit of despondency when you read the lives of the saints, because it might seem that miracles happen all of the time, everywhere, by the people you're reading about, and you barely see that in real life. And that is, and on occasion that can be really hurtful. Why did not my prayer heal somebody who was on their deathbed, even though that person deserved it, so to speak, this movie does make a great point. It is not about the gifts. Gifts are nice. They serve their purpose, but they're not. They do not give you a value as a person. That is why I said at the beginning of the movie that this is a story of Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel because the Lord accepted the sacrifice of Abel, but not of Cain. However, at no point does God say that. No point does God say that the sacrifice of Cain was problematic or something, in a way, because even God says so, because Abel was under Cain's authority. Through Abel, God accepted in a way a sacrifice of Cain, but he was simply blind, to see that. And Mirabelle isn't a perfect character either. We might commiserate with her. Oh, poor Mirabelle, she didn't receive a gift, and that's so sad. However, she does get blind to horrific suffering her grandmother went through, because her grandmother witnessed the murder of her own husband as she held their 3 children in her arms, and Mirabelle does lose sight of that. So she does have that, for the purposes of this movie, villainous strain, even though it is nowhere as strong as it comes with Abuela. Also, the film focuses a lot on poor, giftless Mirabelle, but you never see villagers complaining about not receiving gifts. None of them are like, why don't we get a gift? And if one member of family Madrigal can ask that, why can't other villagers who are also fleeing the pursuers at the beginning of the movie, So it's something to ponder. So shout out to all those poor villagers who never even had a chance to get a supernatural gift, much less not get it, because we require a plot. I don't want to comment on Bruno too much, even though I know that he is everybody's favorite, again, for a good reason. But I think that his visions are interesting, at least the main one that is central to the plot of this movie. Because when Bruno has his visions, he manifests a sheet of green glass, a pane of green glass, and those visions are sort of embossed within that glass. And when Mirabelle sees a vision of her, she sees herself in front of their family home, again, which is very important to the plot. And there are huge cracks on the house. However, if you move the glass on the side, you can see her. You can see that also there is a version of house being completely whole. Now, that can either mean that Mirabelle will both cause the fall and the repair of the house of Usher, of the Madrigal, or that those prophecies leave room for, free will. She can destroy or she can mend the house, and we have that in the Old Testament most directly with the prayer of King Manasseh, who was cursed by God for his misdeeds to die. However, at his repentance, God extended his life by, 15 years. So that's an interesting little tidbit that I liked. So there are a lot of theories why Mirabelle didn't get a gift. And the 2 most popular ones are that, first, that her gift was to preserve the family. She did not have any special powers, but thanks to her, the powers of all other members were preserved. The second one is that her gift is to be an inheritor of Abuela as the bearer of the miracle candle, which is the source of the power of Madrigals. Abuela herself does not have any power, and it's really interesting how much she puts down Mirabelle, even though her power is simply to, go around with the candle and impose her will on her poor family members, But other than that, she nothing extraordinary. So the lack of relatability in Abuela is simply amazing. However, I think that the major reason, of course, maybe there will be an Encanto 2 and I will be proven wrong, but I think that one of the major reasons why Mirabelle did not receive a gift, and this is the most Christian reason of them all, is maybe because she didn't need one, Maybe God was like, Encanto is well provided for the time being, or at all, this girl does not need a gift, Again, we are not our supernatural gifts. If we were, we're in a lot of hot water. Um, Also, an important thing regarding personal growth. I think that this movie makes a great point that our biggest personal growth comes from great suffering. That is what initially bestows the gift upon Madrigals, Abuela witnessing the horrific murder of her husband. And that is what saves the Encanto, and that is what grants the gifts. And the second great tear in her is her, being sort of reminded by Mirabelle of that great suffering. There is a saint, I forgot his name, he was a great miracle worker, and one of the peasants asked him if he can become a great miracle worker like that saint. And that saint said, well, that's no problem, simply pluck out an eyelash and tie a knot. And the peasant said, that's impossible. And the saint told him, well, that is how difficult it was for me to obtain this gift of wonder working. I hope this video was sort of useful. It was simply I wanted something to put out there in the world, and that's about it. Bye guys.